sure many of you have noticed this already, but the entire northern half of the world map has been totally submerged in ice and snow, with similar visual effects we've seen up at Winterfell and Castle Black since forever. So everywhere from around Grey Watch Tower and up on the map is covered in this. Moat Cailin and Dreadfort are the exact same, and actually Twins is about the cutoff point where it's still, normal weather. Just have to go a little bit south between Twins and Grey Watch to get to that border. As we see on the world map, all this stuff is covered in ice and snow, and I'm assuming it won't just stay as normal grassy areas if they've already changed the mini-map and world map to that extent. So the question now is, where does this lead and what happens with this? Because the game is called Game of Thrones Winter is Coming, so I'm assuming this is something they've had in the works for quite a long time, with winter coming further and further south. And maybe this is going to see something that injects a bit of life into the game, takes away a bit of staleness, maybe adds a bit of freshness. And I think that would be very, very welcomed from a lot of us, right? So I don't have any information about this whatsoever. It's just a theorizing video more than anything, thinking about what we could potentially end up seeing here. And if there's any little hints we can look towards to figure some things out. So I have looked at the Pioneer server to see if there are any new commanders, troop appearances, anything like that, if the world map was any different to live, and it's in the exact same state. So the ice hasn't gone any further south, even into these areas. There's nothing new anywhere, no new events, so we can't look at any hints from there. They did remove Army of the Dead just a few weeks ago, and I'm now starting to wonder if that timing wasn't necessarily a coincidence. Maybe they wanted to free up the Army of the Dead just as a concept for something else, and maybe a new event will come, or maybe even just the world map itself will see that. So an idea I've had for quite a long time, I don't know where this idea even came from honestly, but if the entire map gets taken over by ice, as winter is coming indicates, you could reskin rebel groups and rebel camps and just change rebels to whites, so you could have white groups and white camps, maybe scale up the power difficulty a bit, at least on the high ends for seasoned players, maybe change the loot tables, maybe scale up the loot just a tad, add some things like low amounts of refined rough or wash stones maybe. That's one thing you could potentially do. You could change rebel leaders and reskin them, maybe add a rebel leader or two into the rotation for new gear sets, anything like that. I think there's a lot of things you could potentially do with just reskinning the map, and I think that would go a long way in just making dailies a bit more interesting. The things you have to click for every day, just add a bit of life into it compared to everything we've been doing for over 2 years at this point, which hasn't changed in any fundamental way really. So that's something I'd like to see. Whether it will happen, I have no idea whatsoever. We're totally in GT Arcade's hands in that regard. One thing I do think we have a hint towards, quite solidly actually, I've mentioned this in a previous video too when this first came out, but you can see down here, conversion is not supported for these commanders: Darius, Hector, Sabrina, Tyrion Lannister, Simon Blackmire, and Night King. So the Night King is coded into the game as a commander, and he uses his own commander specific tokens to be awakened, and that's the only way we know this because he's listed in this tooltip. I'm pretty sure also I saw him on the Pioneer server in these lineup recommendations at some point when it first got added. I'm not sure if that was deliberate, but I do remember seeing it, and I don't have proof of that, but it was definitely something I saw on the first day or two of that being released. You can believe me or not, I guess. I can't find any examples of it on the live server. They would have obviously have filtered that out when it came to live. But the Night King as a commander is definitely coming. So in what way will we see that, I guess? So we've seen stuff like Darius come out, which is in theory free to play to get, even though it sort of isn't, because to get him gold in any reasonable amount of time, you just have to buy the spins directly with black diamonds. But he is in theory free to play to obtain. I think most people I've seen, the most likely thing he's going to be is a power creeped 1000 black diamond commander, basically. So you have the stuff like Cersei, Daenerys, Sandor, Jon, and Baelish, who have historically been the 25% total commanders. Maybe the Night King could come in power creeping that a bit, going to 30 to 35% at base and then being awakened above that. You could release him just at 25% totals, I guess, but you'd have to give people a reason to buy him, especially when all these existing ones are being awakened. It wouldn't surprise me if he came out awakened on release, like we've seen with stuff like Darius. I think Salma came out like that, especially because he's awakenable with his own tokens, and that'll probably slow how quickly he can be awakened generally. I do see that as the most likely route, but I would assume when he comes out he would be the best commander in the game. Just thematically and lore-wise, it would make the most sense, I guess. It's Daenerys, you could potentially see being above him just because of the dragons. But Daenerys has been in the game since forever, and we haven't seen her awakened yet. Her awakening will probably be beyond ridiculous when it actually comes out. That's probably why they're delaying it so much. Because her 4-star will be, Dracarys of some sort, and it'll probably be something like her active in Siege of Winterfell, which is just by far the best active ability in that event by quite a distance. The damage it does is just absurd. So tell me if you have any ideas or thoughts on what the Night King Commander could look like, and just generally, what's happening here with the map and where this might lead, because I think a lot of people have very differing ideas on it. I have heard stuff like the game's dying, they're going to release the Night King as a cash grab, as a power creep F5 commander. I mean, it's possible. It's very doom-mongery though. I'm not sure it's really worth the effort to even think about it. But people are out there thinking it, so who am I to judge that? But I'm not sure where this is going to go, but I do think, or hope at least, it will continue going all the way south until the entire map of Westeros is totally covered in ice. And I really would like to see changes to stuff like rebel groups, rebel camps, rebel leaders coming from that, just to add a bit of life into the game again, into dailies. I think that'll be such a healthy change from the game, but it's obviously quite a big endeavor on their end. That is a huge amount of coding and adding of graphics effects and whatnot, but they do still have the basic fundamentals to build from. So you can just keep rebel groups in the same form, rebel camps, but just change the loot tables and the look of them. I mean, it is fairly easy to do, or I would assume so at least. Same with rebels, just adding a new rebel of some sort. Maybe add a secondary ring, for example, because they do have the spacing to add this on like the other side or above, and then they could maybe add, say, a refinement slot to that ring, and you can upgrade the ring similar to, so I don't know, the glorious accessories, where they have different stats that buff different things. You can go in different directions with it. I don't know. There's a bunch of things you could do to just add to the game in some way, and we're just not going to know what that is until we see it. But I am moderately excited, I'd say, to see where it goes. I just hope it isn't false hype. I'd say I hope there is an overarching plan behind it, which is actually going to really add to the game in some way, and it isn't just fruitless aesthetics, basically. So let's wait and see where this leads us.